Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Marketplace Risk virtual event series. My name is Andrea, and I'm the Director of Events and Logistics here at Marketplace Risk. And today we welcome the teams from Tessera, Horev, Wikimedia, and Urban Sitter. Our virtual events are designed to help marketplaces and digital platforms successfully navigate complex trust and safety, risk, compliance, and legal subject matter so they can avoid distractions in order to focus on launching and scaling successfully. Be sure to check out marketplacerisk.com to access hundreds of hours of content, including recordings from previous conferences and summits, on-demand virtual events, our platform podcast, and to subscribe to our newsletter where we keep you up to date on everything, including the 2024 Marketplace Risk Management Conference in San Francisco and the Marketplace Risk Global Summit in London. If you're interested in sponsoring or speaking at the conference, you can visit our website to access sponsorship opportunities and find the call for speakers submission form. We'd love to have you there. Before I hand things over to today's presenters, I want to go over a few housekeeping items. First, this event is being recorded, so the recording will be available for you to access on demand at the Marketplace Risk website. And second, all attendees have listening capabilities only and are otherwise muted. And third, submit your questions via the control panel. If we have time, we'll answer as many as we can. If we don't get to your questions, feel free to email us at info@marketplacerisk.com and we'll get your questions answered. And now, without further ado, presenters, over to you.
Thanks, Andrea. Hi, everyone. Thanks for everyone joining. And we're going to talk about safety by design today. We'll start with some introductions. Let's go to the agenda so we can take a look at that. We'll be introducing what trust and safety by design means. We'll try to make it concrete with examples, discuss practical applications, and maybe, hopefully, some useful best practices you can walk away with. We'll also be taking questions, like Andrea said, and so please feel free to share those, and we'll try to pepper them out throughout the conversation, and if we have some time at the end, we'll get to the rest. I'll start by asking our panelists to introduce themselves and explain briefly why this topic is meaningful to them. I'll start. My name is Gilad Horev. I'm the VP of Product at Tessera, which is a Checkr company. I've been doing product for years and leading product teams, etc., but my roots are in risk and trust and safety. And that's why, that's what I did at PayPal. That's what I did early on at Eventbrite. And this subject is important to me exactly because of that reasons. I've seen product teams and trust and safety teams work well together. And I've seen how, when done thoughtfully and considered upfront, trust and safety can be truly transformational to a product and the user experiences associated with it. I'll hand it over to Abigail.
Sure, I can go. Hi, everyone. My name is Abigail, and I'm on the Trust and Safety team at the Wikimedia Foundation. We support Wikipedia and a range of other open source products and platforms. I predominantly work on content and product policy, which mostly involves drafting policies for our online platforms and products in collaboration with our community. And another bucket of my work is advising our products and engineering teams on safety risks and working together with them to build solutions to mitigate them. So safety by design is very important to me. And I'm very passionate about this topic because I think for a long time, and this is probably still true, TNS work has mostly been reactive. We keep getting surprised by events and happenings in the world, like conflict, elections, etc. And we're in some ways, playing catch up with bad actors. And I think that centering user safety in product design and development processes can help us be more proactive at minimizing online abuse and harm. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about this topic today and share ideas, and also, listen to what everybody else has to say. And I'll pass it on to Lynn.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I'm Lynn Perkins. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Urban Sitter. We're a marketplace platform that helps families and caregivers connect. As you can imagine, in a situation where you're bringing strangers together in somebody's home to take care of their most important family members, whether that's their children or their parents or their pets, trust and safety is of utmost importance. And so it's been on the forefront of my mind and of our company's priority since we started the business. So really excited to be here today to talk about it a little more. And Eric, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lynn, and welcome everybody. I'm Eric Timrek, Director of Trust and Safety at OfferUp. OfferUp is a customer-to-customer marketplace, primarily where people exchange goods. We additionally have a new business, which is jobs. We're pretty excited about. And trust and safety by design is really important to me because the alternative is pretty unpleasant. Reactive trust and safety is rough, both on the user experience as well as on all of us who have to come in every day and work in this space. If you can get ahead of it and plan for it and control the experience and make sure it's high quality, it just makes all the difference to us and to all of our customers. So I think I'll pass it back to Gilad. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll take it. Thanks, Eric, Lynn, Abigail. Appreciate you joining us today. Let's get started and talk about trust and safety by design and what that means. So I think the area of trust and safety and integrity is relatively new, and as this area matures, companies are really thinking more about what building trust and safety into products and experiences should look like. So trust and safety by design is something we hear companies talking about more and more, and it's basically how to make sure that trust and safety considerations are not tacked on later, but rather considered upfront as a part of the design of the product and the customer experience. When done right, the result is more effective solutions, better user experiences, and a better product. And the key themes that we hear from companies when they talk about this are, one, proactivity. So embedding safety measures into early design stages, preemptively mitigating risks, basically being proactive rather than remedial. The second is being human-centric, and this is taking a page from design thinking. So this is a term from design thinking, and really, if I simplify it, it means involving stakeholders, including users, in all problem-solving stages, from understanding the problem that we're trying to solve all the way to implementing solutions. And finally, a third thing that we hear a lot in this thinking is transparency, ensuring clear policies and user controls with an emphasis on openness and easy comprehension. I'm curious to ask the panelists, what else comes to mind for you when you think about trust and safety by design? What does that mean for you?
I'm happy to jump in. For us, we're looking at two sides of the marketplace. We have families who are welcoming a stranger into their home, and then we have care providers who are going into a stranger's home. And so in both of those situations, it creates a lot of uncertainty. And so we like to think about how can we plan to remove the uncertainty and elicit as much trust as possible with what we show. And I think you use the word transparent, and we think about that all the time. How can we be really transparent in terms of the data that we show about both sides of the marketplace? How can we be transparent about showing information about the job so people are lined up for success? I really think that the transparency piece is key. And then on the human-centered side, I think all of us are dealing with people and decisions that they're making, whether it's something that they're purchasing or taking care of somebody or data that they're consuming. And so you have to always think about humans involvement in this, not just from the get-go, but I think also in an ongoing way, and making sure that once you release something out into the wild, you're looking at how it's impacting your users. And I can give a great example of a lesson we learned, which was we do a lot to show you other people that you trust if they've used the care provider. So it might be like, hey, 10 people from your school have used this person, or 5 people from your workplace. And I would have assumed really early on in the business that if your favorite care provider was not available on our platform, that you would go back to a recommendation from somebody that you trust, whether it's a parent in one of your groups or a friend. But it turns out that we started to see users looking at their favorite care providers' connections. And so this was something that randomly showed up in the product. We didn't intentionally design it, but it was there, and we could see that people were making decisions based on, hey, if I think so-and-so is a great babysitter, then I'm I want to trust their friends, whether it's somebody they're in grad school with or somebody that they work with professionally. I'd be much more inclined to trust their friends. And so we were able to take that data, and that was a good insight where we didn't overdevelop the product. We actually waited to see how people would use it. And truthfully, we didn't see that one coming. And we were able to then further embed it into the product and make it part of the user experience.
I love that example because it really shows just the application of product work, like product work, design work, user understanding to a trust problem, and really speaks to what this is about.
I'll jump in too. First of all, I think this is a great framework for how to look at at trust and safety by design. And I think ultimately a lot of it comes down to the human-centered piece and getting that right. But to get there, you have to do the others, right? So at OfferUp, we sort of start with the one on the bottom and come up with policies and sort of create an intentional sort of view of what we want the experience to be like, then deliver it through the proactive, which can be a mix of setting thresholds, or providing users with the right kind of information to help them make good choices. But there, a ton goes into proactive. That's where the bulk of the work is. But what should definitely come from it, and what we always try to do in the proactive piece is create a lot of data. Because ultimately, again, getting back to the human-centered thing, you need to convince people, and we all come from different backgrounds and different experiences. And so some people are very trust and safety focused and others are not. And your stakeholders in the company and executives may or may not be. But if you create a bunch of data in the way that you transact and bring that data in an organized fashion, the human-centered decisions about how to prioritize work, or what's important, what isn't important, what's the truth about the experience, what isn't, all that data informs the human decisions, and you can kind of bring the whole company or whole stakeholder set along with you. So while most of the work, I think, is in proactive, the data and the decision making that come from human-centered really steer the ship, and that's the one to get absolutely right.
Sure. Okay. I can also add on to this. I think safety by design, to me, which, everything that everybody has already mentioned, is like centering the user and also user safety in the product development and design process. I think of a design process it helps you to think of all the most stuff, if not all, of the possible scenarios of how a new product or feature could cause or incite harm or abuse to a user, as well as also figuring out how to embed safety measures and controls into new products and features. Thinking of it more from a process angle, and also just how we do it at Wiki, I think this will normally look like having trust and safety as a stakeholder in the product development process to flag and discuss safety risks, trade-offs, and solutions. Similar to the points that Gilad already raised, I think that safety by design really thrives on efficient cross-functional work across teams internally, as well as identifying and looping in the relevant stakeholders into the process very early on. Eric was mentioned, I think those works sometimes requires an all-hands-on-deck approach from several sub-teams across TNS, privacy, security, human rights, legal, subject matter experts, even in some cases, I think market specialists to provide context where necessary. And I think depending on how your organization is structured, this may or may not be easy, but it is also essential to cover some of the major risk areas. So I think the first step to a good safety by design process is identifying the relevant teams to collaborate with, as well as involving them early on at the early stages of the product development process, rather than later, to avoid creating blockers for product launch. I also agree, what has already been flagged as having a human-centered approach is also very necessary. At Wikimedia, we have a very large and active community of editors and volunteers who are also our safety frontliners who help with removing inappropriate content or flagging safety risks. So we work collaboratively with them by ensuring that they're consulted on new products, features, or even policies, so that feedback is used to create, this like additional safety layer to ensure that products are like human-centered and user feedback is included in the design process.
I like that a lot. I think that it's interesting that I think both Abigail and Eric touched on this idea of proactive, bringing people early in the process, bringing the trust and safety people early in the process. And I think that in many ways, this is important because it's a reaction to what in some companies is the default, which is that trust and safety, when you think about a small company and how it grows from customer support, right? It's customer support deals with these things that maybe we didn't think about. And there's a kernel of experts that come to understand those things. And then what you get is, because of the place that customer support starts at, which is at the end, at the dealing with customer issues after the fact, or helping customers. Sometimes that feeds into product development, but these are, I think, almost by the virtue of how these functions develop at many companies, it becomes like systemically almost an afterthought, or at least an after the fact consideration. So I think both Abigail and Eric, you spoke about something really interesting about bringing this into the forefront. I think for Lynn, maybe because of the type of product that you have, it's so obvious that from day one, trust is a big value prop, but
Yeah,
that's not always the case.
And I would almost argue that earlier in the business, you need to almost invest disproportionately, because you're learning so much, and it's more important that you ideally want to have more one-on-one interactions with your customers early on, because your goal is to be able to then scale those learnings so that they're built into the product, or they're in the FAQs, or whatever you're going to do to make it more manageable down the road. But I think it's almost like you almost disproportionately need to invest more in having those people up front and involved in the process early on, because those early learnings can really drive how you build the trust and safety into the product to sort of alleviate some of the reactive measures that you would need to take otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So now that we're on the same page about what we mean by trust and safety by design, what that actually means to us, maybe we can move forward and talk about how companies inject into various stages of their user experience that trust, that safety. Part of our offering at Tessera is to consult. It's kind of a consultative approach. When we work with customers, we have products that require some judgment on how to deploy them, and so we work closely with our customers to understand their specific problems and how best to use the data signals that we provide. And when we do that, we think about three primary jobs that trust and safety measures do for us. Maybe we can show all three of them. I know this slide seems to build. Yep. So we talk about prevention and safety is one job, and this is a focus on proactive measures to help ensure safety. Under this bucket, we've got things like screening at onboarding, or gating types of access, like you can consume content, but you can't upload it, or something like that, depending on certain screenings or user behavior. The second is trust and confidence building, and that's a job of the trust and safety measure. It's not just to prevent bad things from happening, it's also to emphasize making it easier for people to trust each other, or to know when to trust each other and when not to. And here there's under this things like policy, communication, and education, or badging systems that help you understand and orient yourself within a marketplace. And finally, incident management and resolution. And this means really helping to address or manage possible trust and safety issues that arise. Selective screenings, ways to things that give us context for how to deal with an issue that's arising so that we can deal with it more effectively. Ways to just mechanisms to quickly deactivate accounts or stop things from escalating further fall into this bucket. So I'm curious for the panelists, first of all, this is the framework that we think through. Is this framework useful to you, interesting? And what additional examples of safety touch points are part of your organization's policy or processes? Are you playing in all these buckets? Where do you invest most of your time, and maybe how this has changed over time?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think this hits very close to home. I mean, we may use slightly different words as we think about it, but it's really close. And I think they're all important. I'll just kind of hit on the last for a second, incident management and resolution. I think it's really important. I mean, I don't know about everybody here, but my biggest fear as a trust and safety professional is unintended consequences. You know, essentially like you flag large numbers of users as being bad for one reason or another, some sort of error somewhere, and drive away good users. And that is just like my nightmare. That is what I always try to fight against. And so incident management and resolution is central to that. Getting proportional detection and then proportional response right for bad behavior, to me, is so critical. If you only have one method of responding, let's say it was like to cancel someone's account or something like that, well, then your risk goes up dramatically. And so one of the things that we think about is what's the full suite of responses that we need based on the type of behavior that we observe. So if it's low severity behavior, in our case, let's say somebody is posting a service, like they remove junk or something like that, we don't allow services on the platform because we're an item marketplace. I mean, yeah, okay, so it's a violation, but it isn't egregious, right? And no one's going to be harmed if someone posts a junk service, a junk collection service. So for something like that, we try to tune into our model a proportional response that includes kind of a nurturing email and removal of the item, but you know, there's a pretty high threshold for that kind of behavior if that happens. Whereas on the much more severe end, if someone is, you know, creating offensive or threatening content of any sort, then of course we have to have much more sort of proportional responses for that too. And so I think getting all of that right is really important. And I sort of just could never have enough flavors of responses in my toolbox. I want like every kind of way to respond to an incident possible. And so we're always investing in that. It's been part of our plan last year. It's part of our plan this coming year to continue to build options so that there's always the right response available when you observe a certain kind of behavior.
Yeah, I can also jump in here. I think I agree with you, Eric, on like, you know, all three, I feel like all three buckets are like very important. So they're all like parts, you know, of our work that I think you kind of have to invest in them equally in some ways. And I guess also it depends on your products and everything. But I can also give an example in the trust and confidence building bucket. And to provide maybe some context to how trust and safety works at Wikimedia, because I do know that, you know, we have a very unique model. We have a very like unique safety model, especially in the area of like content policy, where we have what maybe is typically referred to as like a community reliant policy model, where there is a set of high level policies that usually govern all of our products and platforms. And then we have our community moderators who interpret these policies into specific moderation decisions or localize these policies for their local communities. So our policy and product development processes are very collaborative to build user trust and buy-in. Like user trust is very, very important in our work. We do this by hosting like consultation sessions with our community on new policies or updates. This is done in different ways, asynchronously or also during live community calls to gather feedback directly, and also being transparent with our community on when we can or cannot take actions, and also on feedback giving, and also on why, and being transparent with them. I've noticed has helped us like build trust and like strengthen our relationship with our community. We are also transparent with updating our community on changes in policies and enforcement processes, and also providing training and awareness when needed. This also helps to get our communities buy-in and trust, which like I said, is also very necessary in our work because they do most of our content moderation and policy and enforcement. So it is very key for them to be looped in all of the processes, to be aware and informed. I think building trust also helps to ensure that moderators can freely share feedback and flag like safety risks to us when necessary, because we rely on them as much as they rely on that. So that two-way communication is also important. And I think as trust and safety professionals, we sometimes forget about the trust. Maybe sometimes we overly focus on the safety part of it. And I think that it is equally important, especially if you want users to use, some of the safety tools that we are building and creating for them to, empower them and to build more confidence in them, to own some of these tools and use it, for their safety on our platform. So I think that transparency and engagement are very, the two main things that are very important to building trust. And those are some of the ways that we've done it at Wikimedia.
That's interesting. I think we have a question that's interesting related to, I think Abigail talked about trust and confidence building, and Eric talked a little bit more about the incident management side of things. We have a question that's relating to prevention, and I'll throw it to the panel. How does friction in the workflow figure into considerations of incorporating trust and safety into the product? So basically, how do we balance abandonment, friction with safety? I'm curious, Lynn, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we think about it all the time. And, I'll give an interesting example. When we first started, having mandatory background checks for providers was not something that was widely done either on our competitors' platforms or ours. And we decided that we felt it was something we should bring into the experience. And so we tested it. And what was really interesting, that's clearly adding friction to the onboarding process for a care provider. And what's interesting about that is that it wasn't like we lost a lot of users or potential users because they weren't passing the background checks. I think what it ended up doing is we did have fewer people make it through the funnel, but what we found is that the people who went all the way through the process of completing the background check ended up being care providers that canceled at a lower rate than the base pool. They responded more quickly to jobs. They just had higher intent for wanting this type of work. It wasn't that people who didn't want to complete the background check necessarily had a criminal history or anything like that. But what we found is that actually by putting a little bit of friction in the process, it actually aligned with the type of behaviors we want to see on the platform. It brought us people who have more intent to work in the care providing field. And as such it provided a better experience for families, not just around that basic background check, but actually around all of these other behaviors that turned out to be related to putting a little friction in the process. So that's an experience where, we added friction, which people may say, hey, fundamentally, you want to make it as easy as possible for users to get to your experience. But in this case, it actually drove better outcomes, which then spreads word of mouth wise to both other care providers and families. So it ended up putting a little friction in there was a good experience for us.
Yeah, I think more generalizing that a little bit further, that's a great, terrific example. And I think that friction is not a bad word. Friction it's not something we should avoid at all cost. And in fact, sometimes the reduction of friction, I think, creates problem further down the line that block the user from being able to do what we want them to do. So you'll see places where what are some examples might be if you're trying to onboard suppliers to a marketplace and you're rushing them through the onboarding flow without like something really simple, like maybe you didn't do enough KYC, but then, or know your customer, right? You didn't actually do the verification that you needed to do. And then when it comes time to pay them out, suddenly there's a problem. And now they're having a really bad experience when you could have at a high intent point in the process where they are highly motivated, just asked for additional information, done the KYC to enable them to successfully coast kind of through the experiences further down. Similarly, like
I think that's so right. And that's where you want them later in the experience. Like, so in that example where they're getting paid out, they've already performed whatever it is that you're hoping that they'll perform. And so putting the friction in at the point where they should feel most warm about your product and most excited to continue to be a loyal customer is just not the place where you want to see you want to have the friction if you're going to insert it in the right spot in the process.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be about something so literal. It could be about trust signals. How well are you setting up a supplier on any of these products if you onboarded them but didn't give them enough information for their profile to look trusted? You didn't give them the ability to add the trust signals. Maybe you didn't require, they thought that they were trying to get it, they just want their profile up, but then they have a profile up on your platform and they're not getting any business. And that customer will churn. If you added more trust friction to begin with and said, okay, add a photo, answer these couple questions so that we know that this is a signal that helps consumers see you in a different light, maybe book you more likely, especially if you're a new supplier to the marketplace, maybe there's inherent trust gaps there. This is the way to counteract them. Then you've added friction in a way that helps. And so I think that it's really important to not, yeah. So I love that example from Lynn. All right, let's move forward. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges uh, of implementing trust and safety by design. It's not as simple as identifying the types of safety experiences, right? 3 buckets of high, and then deciding to apply thoughtful safety by design approaches. There are some real challenges, and teams face these challenges and overcome them. I want to walk through some of these challenges at a high level, and then maybe talk through with panelists about how what additional challenges you see and how to overcome them. I think the first is that there really requires a change in mindset, fundamental shifts in the thinking and hierarchy of priorities within a team, which this is a change that might face resistance in an organization. There's ways to the executive championing might help, et cetera, but this is a change. And the other one is there's a time and resource investment here, especially early on when you're implementing kind of more thoughtful thinking. It may take longer and more time and work up front. And even if you can rationalize that there's a payback in less rework or fewer problems down the line, and even if we know that the outcomes for the users are better, this is an investment and it's hard, and that's often an obstacle. Upskilling and teaching staff might not be trained on trust and safety, or product considerations or thinking. So, for example, product teams may not always understand trust and safety deeply enough to be able to have these considerations built into the product. Or trust and safety teams often are behind the scenes and may not think about design thinking or user experiences in a way that enables them to do a lot more than bias towards reactive safety measures. Cross-functional alignment and process is also challenging. There's a lot of, I think Abigail talked about some of the different participants and factions in these decision making. There's trust and safety teams and policy and legal and PR, detection, UX. There's so many players here that need alignment. And finally, balancing user experience, which is a little bit of what we touched on at the end here. Ensuring top-notch trust and safety shouldn't compromise user experience, but there's a delicate balance here, and we talked about that just now. What advice, I'm curious from the panel, do you have for our attendees when it comes to navigating these challenges and other challenges that you've seen?
I'll jump in. So first of all, I look at this list and I hear you talking, Gilad, and my mind just rushes back to a million events that stress me out. I feel like my blood pressure going up when we look at the challenges, because it is always a rocky road. It is never smooth in trust and safety. There's just a lot of learnings and a lot of hard lessons along the way that I think is sort of impossible to skip by. But that being said, I think that the antidote to design challenges, all of the ones you've listed here, in my mind, it comes down to the customer voice. So if you build into your product good means for customers to provide you input, feedback of any sort, about your platform, about your service, they will help you. They will give you frank and honest feedback about what is working and what is not. And so in my mind, as I said, the antidote is building those pipelines, organizing that customer voice information, and bringing it to all of the right places in your organization at the right times, because that will help shift mindsets. that will help prioritize resources. That will help you see where to invest in staff changes, et cetera, et cetera. The customer perspective is central. Without our customers, we have no business, right? And so it is the most convincing way that I have found to shift, to make any changes in the company that you need to essentially address these types of challenges. So that's what I would say. I would say, there are many ways, and I'm sure I can't wait to hear what everybody else says. But for me, one of the most important things is that customer voice and organizing that information.
Yeah, no, I also agree with like prioritizing, user feedback and data. I think that definitely makes it easier to get leadership to prioritize and invest resources into this work. I think it is also important to make that connection of how our work impacts like brand safety and in turn influences user retention or attracting new users. Some of the things that I feel like leadership wants to hear or like it strikes a chord with them. So it's like if you make those connections and then back it with like data and evidence, and also like, highlighting the trade-offs from compromising on user safety, I think that helps. Another constraint that I've observed, which Gilad, you already talked about, is like cross-functional alignments, which in turn affects time and resources and can also slow down the product development processes, which I know makes a lot of product managers think of trust and safety as an enemy to their work progress. But some ways to navigate this is to, I think, most of the things you've already said, identifying the relevant stakeholders and consulting them earlier in the process instead of bringing them on to review right before product launch, for example. And also to ensure alignments, I think it's important to set up meetings among all relevant stakeholders to have them in the same room to sometimes discuss these risks and trade-offs in real time, as well as having like metrics and a criteria for like risk assessment and analysis. I think doing some kind of risk assessment and analysis helps to also rank and prioritize the risk, because I think there'll always be a lot of things, but there are usually like, on a spectrum, like high to low. And, sometimes you'd rather have to prioritize like the very high risk, because if you're creating a new feature that could cause offline violence or cause somebody to, like kill themselves or commit suicide or something, that is like really high. And I think that sometimes ranking those risks will help to like prioritize, and that's also another way to like save time and be more efficient. Yeah, that's what I'll say about that.
I can throw in just 3 super simple tactical things that we do to make sure that this is kind of on the forefront of everybody's minds and to make it integral to every department. So number 1, I think when you're doing user research, so when you have either one-on-one customer research or you're reviewing survey data, invite people from other departments to be your partner on it. So if we're doing, if somebody on our product or design team is interviewing a user, we may ask somebody from engineering if they're interested in joining. We always have somebody sign up, and it can be somebody at any level in any department, because I think it's really important that you keep as much of your company close to the customers as you can. Number 2, I would say, make sure when something significant happens on the trust and safety front, whether that's good or bad, that you're doing a retro and involving cross-departmentally or involving people. So recently we had an example where we had a bad actor on the platform, and nothing major, but it came up and we were talking about it, and our engineer said, oh, I think I can, one of our engineers said, oh, I think I can actually, I want to go run a report. I want to build a report to see if other people who are demonstrating these similar characteristics are on the platform. And so I think reviewing things, it's easy to want to brush something bad under the rug, but actually taking the time to review it and say, okay, are there things we can build or things we can do to prevent this from happening again? I think that retro mentality is really important. And then I would say, finally, we make it, it's, some of the things that we've mentioned here today, transparency and empathy, all of these are incorporated into our core values, and making sure that we're recognizing people in the company in any department when they're demonstrating them, just to show that it's core to our business.
Those are some really practical takeaways on how to deal with some of these challenges. I want to move us forward a little bit, but before I do, we've got a few questions about bias, about introducing bias introduced in screening and how to avoid that. Uh, uh, Gender, race, caste, etc. Came up, and I think I'd love to hear what the panel has to say about this. Abigail specifically was asked about how you deal with this because of the nature of your platform, but really how to deal with the unintended consequences of certain screenings that might result in bias.
Sure, I can start. I think when it comes to bias, and this is probably a very I don't know if it's a popular opinion, but I think just bias in trust and safety generally, in trust and safety work generally, I would say is one, we just need to hire more people from different backgrounds and cultures, experiences to do this work, because I think that as trust and safety professionals, our work impacts, users globally all over the world. And as individuals, we all have our biases. I don't know if we can ever fully get rid of our biases, but we can work towards minimizing them. And I think that sometimes when you have diversity and a breadth of people with different backgrounds and experiences, that helps. I think it's not also just that, talking about experiences even for us, and I think, our design process, which we're probably going to start talking about in the next slide, we try to involve people from different teams, even like human rights, subject matter experts in sometimes if it's like a product that's focused on a specific region or could have issues in a specific region, you may need like a market specialist in that area. Or if it's something that's like child safety focused, you might need somebody with an issue area expert in that area. And I think that diversity in experience is important to help ensure that different perspectives are represented, and that we are also accounting for users, like a breadth of users, across like different regions and experiences, and thinking of all the many possible scenarios, because we have limited experiences, and sometimes there's a limit to like all the scenarios you can create. But then if we have different people in the room with different experiences and perspectives, that helps to think about, that to contribute to that breadth. And I think responding to especially the last question on how do we do that, given that we have a community-driven model, I think for us, though, is the rebus, well, not exactly the rebus, but I think thinking about it also from diversity, even in the user pool, is also important, because if you're doing like user research or doing consultation, consulting users for their feedback and data, I think is also important to make sure that you have diversity in both in backgrounds and experiences and in cultures, in that pool, to make sure they're also giving you like, there's also the breadth and diversity in the feedback that you're getting that can help you think of because our users are our users are diverse, so it helps you think about all the different users and how these things affect them in different ways, to build solutions, to think about that when you're building solutions to make it more holistic. So yeah, that's what I'll say about that. But I think it's hard. It's hard work. But little things, Dean, starting and putting in the work helps to make progress on this for sure.
One thing I'll add is I think that there's also I think everything Abigail said is spot on. I also think that understanding the data that you're basing your decisions on is very important. I can speak specifically to in Tessera space, but this is highly applicable to many other domains. We deal with criminal data, for example, so records, criminal records, etc. Understanding the inherent biases that exist and talking to people that really are expert in the data helps you avoid making mistakes that you didn't intend to make. That is true also when you're looking at your own data set. I love the intuition, Lynn, the engineer, whose intuition was, let me take a look at other examples of people exhibiting this behavior. The intuition behind questions like that is not just, oh, we found something bad, then obviously this is a bad thing, but rather, let's look and see, is this actually correlated? Is this also correlated to a different type of behavior that is good? So really understanding your data so that you're not creating hindsight bias or assuming your data doesn't have an opinion, because your data does. And so I think that's crucially important as well. With that, I want to make sure that we have time for some more practical applications. So let's move forward. I'd like to hear from some of our panelists about their individual experiences of applying this thinking in practice. So maybe we'll start with Abigail.
Sure, yeah. So I can start, and I can talk about a design process that we've implemented at Wikimedia that is helping us prioritize safety while also solving for some of the challenges that we already mentioned. So for a while, we didn't really have a process for TNS to actively engage with our product and tech teams to review or provide consultation on new products. It was mostly an afterthought, as I guess I imagine it's probably the same in other companies, that, you know, they'll usually reach out to us prior to product launch, maybe a day or a week. And in some cases, they wouldn't even reach out at all. And they'll mostly reach out to, I guess, maybe the legal team, for example, because, you know, they don't want to get trouble. They don't want to get into trouble with any regulation or law. And that was it. So we sometimes didn't have visibility into new products or features that could impact our work or keep our community, our work of keeping our community safe. And also on the product side, they didn't see the need in reaching out to us early or didn't even know it was relevant to their work. So they'll sometimes have to reach out to different teams through different channels, and there was you know, a lack of alignment in feedback shared, which was also very overwhelming and confusing for them. So to solve for these challenges, our legal department, which is made up of TNS, policy, privacy, security, and human rights teams, and also our community support team, we decided to create a one-stop shop, which will create this like centralized process for staff to reach out to us if they needed consultation on new features or products or even projects. And we call this the service center. So this provided this kind of a unified intake system, which teams can use to reach out to us or the relevant teams within the department at once at the same time. So teams will usually request for consultation through like this intake forms, and representatives from each team will do a first pass review and provide initial advice within 5 days. And then some teams can review and decide they don't have any feedback to provide, or it's not relevant to their work. And sometimes for requests that are more complex and will require more time, that is communicated to manage expectations. And we also have regular sync calls to discuss these requests to ensure that we are aligned and discuss trade-offs before deciding on next steps with like the PM or the lead on that project. So I think this has really helped us to ensure that safety is prioritized, and that product managers are also encouraged to reach out, even at the, talking about like reaching out early in the process. So like even on the product's ideation stage, for me, ideally, I would love for us to be even, sitting in like the product roadmap meetings, even to just like have a sense of like what is coming, and start having these conversations early on in the process. So this process that we implemented, I think, has also made it less confusing and overwhelming for other teams to know whom to reach out to, or like when to reach out to us, and has made it, I think, more efficient, and has also helped like save time. At least like some of the feedback that we've gotten from the PMs that we've worked with is, I think usually, they would rather not reach out to us because it's like we're seen as like a blocker for their work. But then going through this process and reaching out to us early has helped, it's actually more efficient and helps save time. So there's some of the feedback that we've gotten, and it's still a very relatively new process. I think we've been doing this for just about a year and a half or so. So yeah, I'm happy to, answer more questions, or like if other people have thoughts and opinions about this, but these are some of the ways that we are doing safety by design at Wiki and helping solve some of these problems.
Thank you. That's super interesting. It sounds like quite a system that you've devised. Um, Maybe we can move forward from examples from Lynn from Urban Sitter.
Okay, great. I thought I would focus on how you use data and transparency and your safety by design to really highlight, to give people data that they need to make an informed decision. I think I'm also going to try to hit on, someone had a question about what is the most important thing to focus on, and I'll try to hit on that a little bit here too. So this is what we're looking at here, is the care provider's profile. And what I wanted to show here is how our initial safety step, which is the background check and the manual profile review, how that's our first step. And you can see here, this is our basic threshold. They've been background checked. If we clicked on that, we'd see what day it happened. That's kind of like, okay, that's, in my opinion, that's table stakes. And then it's really, okay, how do I then show you, the potential family, the right provider for you? And so one of the things that we know in our category, and I think for each business, you have to figure out what works in the offline world in your category, and how can you bring that into the platform and maybe do it on steroids. So for us, it's connections. We know that families prefer to have a word of mouth recommendation for a care provider. And so what we do here is we show you, oh, this sitter has worked with parents from your school, or this sitter has worked with, let's say you're using Urban Sitter as a corporate benefit. 3 other colleagues of yours have used this provider. So the second thing we try to show is the connections. Is it she in your neighborhood? Is he or are they somebody who has worked frequently in your neighborhood? Those are all signs of trust. And then we show you performance. So once somebody is actually up and running on the platform, we try to demonstrate through the actions that they've taken how you can count on this person. Do they have a low cancellation rate? If you're looking for somebody in the next 6 hours, we know that response quickly is key, and our algorithm will adjust and show people who are going to respond quickly to your job post. And that's really important. Again, understanding what is your user's biggest stressor or their biggest uncertainty or their biggest concern, and can you make that apparent. I want to talk, somebody mentioned, like, what is the one thing I need to be doing? Well, unfortunately, I wish there was like a magic answer to that, but for every business, I think it's different. And I think it's identifying, once your business has been up and running, what are the things that people are looking for over and over again. And in this case, you can see here that this sitter has 80 reviews. Well, reviews can feel very subjective. If Eric has a toddler and Abigail has a teenager, reviews from the 2 of them, when I have a 6-year-old, are going to feel less relevant. And so one of the things that we've honed in on is this idea of a repeat family. So repeat family means that a family not only felt comfortable enough to have Rebecca come to their house once, but they had her come back a second time. And that seems to be a much more objective measure of trust for new users. And so we like to try to hone in on that. So for the person who asked the question, I think you have to really start looking at how people are using the information that you're putting forward, and then kind of hone in on that. And then finally, I mentioned this earlier, but start your business with high customer support, maybe even exceeding what you would expect, because that will really help you scale support and content into your experience to help your support team down the road. And making sure people, I know that Abigail mentioned this, like making sure people can flag, make your users active contributors, and making sure they can flag when something doesn't seem right.
So it sounds like a big thing is, when you think about it, is obviously specific to the marketplace, but you're saying one is make sure that you have the inputs from users, from your own data. Just make sure that you're getting the inputs. And I'm curious, how did you come up with these specific badges? How did that evolve over time? Like, how do you choose the trust signals?
Right. And you're bringing up something that's interesting too, because you also don't want to overpopulate this. It needs to feel very relevant, but still very clean and efficient. And what we looked at were people's use cases, people who are looking for somebody last minute. You want to make sure that you show them that that there's somebody who's been active on the site recently and has responds quickly. Then people have a fear of cancellation. This is an incredibly important meeting that I need to attend. I need to make sure that my care is going to show up, or I really need to make sure my dad gets driven to the appointment on time. So making sure you show low cancellation rate. So what we looked at were people's pain points. And so really what we're trying to solve for here are, what are the things you need to see that solve the pain point that you have in front of you, and also elicit trust for your specific situation. So if I'm a family with a child with special needs, I can actually go into filters on the platform and find care providers who have worked with kids with my type of need, and just making sure you're thinking about the pain points and the trust signals that your customers, and also on the other side, I'm talking from a parent perspective right now, but the same goes the other way.
Yeah, from a product perspective, that's really in the Venn diagram between like trust and growth, right? Like solve.
Exactly.
Eric, tell us a little bit about OfferUp.
Sure. First of all, I'd say Lynn and Abigail, you are tough acts to follow. Those were great answers. So I'll do my best here. At OfferUp, we use multiple means to help good users look good and separate themselves from others. You kind of want the two spectrums to be as far apart as possible. You want bad to look bad, and you want good to look good. Ideally, action the bad as quickly as possible, right? So we use some of these things on that you see on the slide as overt ways of exhibiting trust on the platform. And so in this way, while on the back end, we're watching data and things, users can also use this kind of information to protect themselves and to make good informed decisions. So we try to be as transparent as possible with our users to kind of empower them. So one thing is user badging. And Lynn had this as well. It's when you detect behavioral data, you can apply a badge, and the user doesn't have to do anything. It's passive for them, which is great. So they just receive a badge when certain behaviors are observed. We also offer a service called TrueU, which is an opt-in verification where a user can take a selfie and scan an ID. This is a really good way for a user who wants to separate themselves from the rest to be intentional about showing trust. And they get a badge there, the blue check mark in Samantha's profile there is the TrueU badge. So giving them a way to opt in is another means of safety by design. Similar to Lynn, again, we have compliments that where users can provide feedback on others, and that just sort of happens, and it's beautiful, and it helps other users kind of understand what they're in for when they're going into a transaction with someone. And then finally, we try to provide multiple means for user-generated feedback, whether that's at the account level or, in our case, the job posting level or the item posting level. But we want to hear what users are saying about their experience, and they're very good about telling us when something doesn't seem right. The other thing I would say, I guess, about this is while these are all overt means of showing trust, they also create data, and we can look at abnormal patterns in that data. So in a business where you're looking to find bad, like in giant piles of data, it's helpful if you have additional means for a user to interact with your platform, because you can look for anomalies. If we have a brand new account that is acting very differently than a normal account when it comes to reviewing other accounts or something, that's not always bad. There are plenty of cases where that might be fine, but it's something to look at. And so we use this data, not only these features, not only as overt trust signals to other users, but also as a source of data to mine for when looking for problems, looking for users who are up to no good for some reason or another. So anyway, I guess I would wrap it up and just say that I think it's one of those things where there is no silver bullet. And so our approach at OfferUp, and frankly, everywhere I've been, is to tune it in and make sure that you have enough ways of determining good and bad, that it's difficult for a bad user, somebody who is on your platform, to do something that you don't allow. It's difficult for them to look good, as you're going to catch them in one way or another. And good users have plenty of means to look good. So that's kind of what we try to do. Try to tune that in. It's always a moving target. We're always making adjustments through testing and learning.
Really nice. We're coming up on time. Ashley, I'll hand it to you for a quick poll.
Yeah, so we do have a quick poll for you all right now. You should be seeing it on your screens. Please let us know if you don't see it, but while you're answering that, I'll hand it over to Gilad to talk a little bit about Tessera safety screenings.
Sure. So I'll share that. So like I said, I'm from Tessera, and we talked a lot. And Tessera, not a marketplace, but helps a lot of marketplaces, a lot of companies that are trying to build trust. Compared to traditional background checks, our safety screening solution it's more cost effective. It's not dollars, it's cents, it's instantaneous, and it's highly customizable. And so it's possible to use this for the entirety of your marketplace, where typically only supply side is screened. It's possible to create things that fit your marketplace and your needs, and help you really increase trust. And in however ways you want to externalize that on your platform. We also offer products in the identity space, enabling confident identity matching. And really, our team partners with companies that are interested in criminal data and identity data to consult on these problems. And so a lot of the conversation that we had today, very relevant and interesting. We hear about these problems a lot, and we can figure out and kind of cross-pollinate between best practices. We're excited to connect after this event to explore how we can help you create safer communities and marketplaces experiences. So please reach out if you're interested. And thank you very much to our panelists. I'll hand it over to Andrea to wrap us up.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. As a reminder, check out marketplacerisk.com to access this recording, along with hundreds of hours of content, and to subscribe to our email newsletter to stay up to date on all events and happenings. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.